Guys, can you hear me? Hi, Kay. Hi, Hank. Hi, Yogesh.
Hi, everyone. Good morning.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, works. Okay.
Oh,
I wasn't.
okay, great.
Nobody saying
Happy New
anything.
Year.
Yep. Thank you. Back to you as well. Hey, Dick.
Hi, everybody. So now this works.
Yeah. Hey, Hank. I was talking without realizing I needed to turn my mic on as well previously. Getting used to the new tools.
Yeah. All the hard things we learned last year basically vanished.
Yeah, all gone.
Wiped out of our memory after 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's like a clean sweep.
Blissful oblivion.
Yeah. While we
Hey,
still see folks joining, hey Roy, we need to make sure that someone is taking notes today. Could
I can help out with that.
That would be fantastic.
I'm starting to get familiar with the note-taking tools, I hope.
Yeah. Well,
so you do
ideally,
have the link? Sorry.
As I was saying, like ideally everyone should add their names to the participant list in a note-taking tool. So because that then obviously helps to keep track of who's in the call and who's not.
Okay.
Actually, is that true? Isn't that generated automatically?
I think so. I don't know how this works with interims, though.
Okay. Well, we can add it nevertheless anyway. So if it's there twice, it doesn't matter. So I guess we are 3 minutes after the hour. Let me also turn on audio. Hi, everyone. Saving bandwidth again. Do you guys want to say something, Steve?
No, I was saying good morning.
Right. Okay, excellent. Hey, Yogesh. Yogesh is back from sabbatical. Excellent.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Happy New Year.
Good.
Happy New Year, Yogesh.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
As I mentioned on the mailing list, this is obviously our first meeting this year, and great that everyone is back from vacation. And I hope you had a good holiday for those who had a holiday. And we will continue where we left off last year. And again, I would like to remind you all that this is a official IETF working group meeting with all the rules that apply. But it's so in that sense, it hasn't changed since last time. Hey, Ray.
Oh, I can't seem to see everybody at the same time. Oh, it doesn't. Does it not work that way? In gallery view, you don't see everybody.
Not everybody's video sharing. I'm struggling with my background thingy here.
All right, I understand.
Not many of us turned our cameras
on. Turn it on to see it. Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, yeah, it's nice to have the camera on and to see everyone. Everyone still looks the same as 3 weeks ago, or so, or 2 weeks. So I looked at the repository to see what changes have been made since we had our last meeting, and also we had some email exchanges over the holidays regarding the use cases from the SIG store group, which I looked at and tried to distill out what the main sort of features were, key features were. And I posted that mail to the list, and I wanted to clean up the repository a little bit. The use case document is getting in a better and better shape, so that's fantastic. I wanted to double check whether the content that is there, both the PR and the issues, are actually up to date, and what changes have been applied. So I think, Hank, you should say a few words about the changes you've been making over the last few days.
Yeah, I can do that. I can even turn on my camera, so you can all see that. The new year was not nice, not kind to me. I'm already tired. So,
yeah.
Hi everybody.
Your hair looks the same, so that's good.
Yeah, I mean, this is my kid's fault, so I blame it all on the kids. So there's that. Yeah, so use case document. Not a lot of changes. Basically, Hannes, I was addressing your review feedback. Like why is section 2 there? There's no content. Isn't that kind of superfluous? So that's gone. An example in a primitive example on one of the consumer requirements. I forgot actually which one it was, but it was in your review. Another one, you were asking for such a specific guide that I think we are crossing a line of use cases and went to solutions territory. So it didn't do that. Unfortunately, I put a fixes issue into the commit, and therefore your comment closed, although only half the issue was basically addressed. So I have to revive that again. It just was force of habit, just fixes, blah, and then poof, it was gone. The magic of GitHub. And so, so that's the things that I addressed basically today. It's all about your input. I think we can address open issues. I appealed them, like fillet them out of your email and put them into separate issues on GitHub. And one of them is about the usage of the term trust. So I think that could be a good agenda item for today, if we have time, or for any other business. And another item for any other business, if you find the time, would be style. Because Yogesh, you might have realized that I broke with your style. So now we have 2 items that is basically in style Yogesh, and the rest of is more like style Hank. And maybe we can take the best of both worlds and mix that a little bit so that we can make them look more homogeneous, which is basically lost now. Also, I have only today, just in time, emailed Monty to schedule a 101 to distill the most important things out of his firmware use case. Especially as we have a firmware use case, you have to separate the actual, use cases here. Both are about firmware, but they address the different requirement sets, I think. So these are my 3 items. The last one with Monty is TBD. I think we will deal with that offline somehow this week. We will find some time, I assume, pending Monty's availability.
Yeah, I just got through that, saw that this morning, and I'll respond to you with my times this week.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, for you it's unfair. I can't expect you to reply until now, basically. So yeah, I had an 8-hour head start.
The time you suggest is unfortunate, but I can't make. But I'll suggest other times. I've got lots of openings this week, so
we'll figure that out. Yeah.
Just to add to Hank's comment, the template or the kind of thing which I was trying to follow was the benchmark I treated from the document which Hannes had shared earlier in November last year regarding the requirements, and then using the requirements to specifically identify the problems we faced in the industry for taking a specific use case into question. So it's not going anywhere in the solution domain. Just to highlight the problem and draw the requirements out of it. So that was the idea behind that template, which I used in my sections. Yeah.
Yeah, and Yogesh, maybe we'd have to have a one-on-one also, just to get a common understanding of style, make a proposal here again, so that the working group can like it or dislike it, thumbs down, maybe, I don't know. Then we can have some rough consensus about style and have that done. And then just go on. We also have, I think, a significant number of use cases already. And now with the additional items from SIG Store, and I see Zach on the call, I think we might have one or two that are actually distinguished, so like different enough to be their own, maybe more, I don't know actually. So from the case studies that was linked and referenced last time. I think there's some overlap, but we have to find that out. So I think everybody who wants to, Dick Brooks and I, for example, very successfully had these small work sessions for each use case that were very productive and very fast forward. And I hope to do that maybe with a small participant group from SIG Store also, so we can find the right place. Like, is this distinct enough, or is it its own item? What do you think? Like, have that as a hands up for.
Hey, so Zach's having audio issues, but I work with him on SIG Store in this capacity as well, and have more time zone overlap with you, Henk. So I'd be happy to collaborate on this.
Sure, cool. Okay, Joshua, I will pin you down on my task list then.
Sounds good.
We can definitely talk about like also the use cases, the specific ones, to see which ones we should capture to have a little bit narrow it down during the meeting today. Dick.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that Hank's participation, our collaboration was very fruitful. And I do want to thank him for all of the helping get the words right. So thank you very much, Hank. I did send one other use case out onto the email list, which I just put out there as a proposal. Whether or not we want to consider it, it's entirely up to the group. But it's basically the registration of a trust score in the spirit of a NIST consumer software label type concept. So thanks very much.
Okay, added that to the list. Another question for cleaning up the repository, or at least getting an idea what the status is the pull request.
Hannes,
okay.
Joshua still has his hand up.
Oh, sorry.
And, yeah.
Not anymore.
Right, IETF tools.
Oh, yeah, IETF tool issue. Hey, John, just realized that you are on the call as well. Hello to you. I posted the link to the repository into the chat window. I hope everyone has seen it. But there's this final merge, Yogesh, by you. Is that still, what's the status of this one? Is it orphan, or like, is this something that we should be closing? Let me.
I think this should be, we should be closing this actually. No, I've looked at it already. I think we have taken these changes in our new draft. So I think, yeah. This was the one when we were trying to merge changes from various places because of a rebase. I think we can close this.
Okay. Since it's your PR, I think you should double check and then close it just to make sure that we don't have sort of pending.
Sorry, Hannes. Sometimes the audio is not clear from you. Yeah, now it is better again.
Okay.
Can you please repeat?
Yeah. Please have a look at the PR and check whether it's it can be closed, because
yeah.
Okay. I also noticed, Hank, that the write-up, the draft write-up, has some to-dos in there at the end of the document. Would it be better to move all the to-dos into the issue tracker instead?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I will put that on the list. Yeah, some of them are most likely outdated already. So I will clean that up.
Cool. Okay, perfect. So I have 3 items which we could or should talk about today, and maybe there are others. I'm just trying to do a little bit of agenda bashing here. That you suggested to talk about the trust term, the 6-store use cases, and also the new use case that Dick had posted to the mailing list about the trust score. Is there anything else we should be covering?
The other thing is,
Roy, your microphone is off.
should be unmuted now. So 2 things. One is work back schedule to March. You and John need to figure out when you need things and how. And the second thing is, should we start refining on the terminology document now that we're getting closer on the use cases, and when do you think we need to start spinning it back up?
Okay, good topics. Yeah. Anything else from anyone?
Just a small update. I moved finally this year, sorry, the adopted architecture document to the IETF organization, and frosted it with ID template from Martin Thompson. So that is self-generating at the moment, and I made a small some consensus call between the authors. We want to migrate all the old history, or do we have a clean slate start? And everybody was basically clean slate. I will, if there are any substantial comments in the old repository, I will move them over and point out to other contributors that we have moved to the official IETF org. Yeah, that's just a report for everybody. Sorry.
Are you going to do the same for the use case document?
No, unless it's adopted.
Okay.
I think I would wait for that.
Okay. What do you have since it's still an individual document, do you have a timeline in mind for submission? Because it's getting better and better, like content-wise.
Yeah, so I think walking backwards for March, as Roy just said, I think the use case document should have an ongoing adoption call before the March meeting. I think that is realistic. We have substantial content that is 6-star, Monty, and Dick's newest item. And literally, if we have that, we have critical mass already. So if we have that in also, and then homogenize the style, I think that is totally up for adoption call. And then we can do this as working group item. I mean, course of procedure won't really change. I think everybody who is involved, a lot of people are involved already, would still contribute, I assume.
Since you also brought up, or John, you raised your hand.
Not derailing that bit, because I'm most motivated for us to finish the work items in flight. But just before I got kicked out of Data Tracker again, I think the question was, have we worked out what we worked out backwards from IETF 116? The 2 deliverables that we committed to during the chartering process that haven't had a lot of work done on them, which are due at the same time, is the security objectives and the concise threat model, which actually, funny enough, I think are very important to explaining why the use cases are interesting and probably should be embodied in the architecture document. So I don't think there's significant new artifacts to create, but I'm concerned that we're running towards March quite rapidly, and we're maybe not putting enough time into those 2 aspects. So we need to table those for some of our future interims. Because everything we're talking about was actually due last December, and I think we all agreed that it was sensible to target those for 116, but we can't really slide shouldn't expect to slide much beyond that. So we've got to take those other two things into account.
So I already saw, sorry for interrupting, that Kay was aggregating requirements out from the use cases. I think that's work towards the threat model items. I think we should also get somebody who is a threat model enthusiast like Brandon Arm as a source of wisdom to us here, and then go through his standard movements so we don't have to reinvent the wheel here for the sake of what works at IETF, and make it hopefully concise. So I'm not sure how concise it will remain over time, but we would do this as a working group action anyways, because we would highlight it could be part of the architecture, and if we're doing that, everybody can contribute. So that is not an issue. So I will ping him, and we'll find out when he is not absolutely overwhelmed, and then try to carve some time out of the schedule.
Who did you say that was? Brendan someone?
Yeah, Brendan Moran is a very good colleague from Yogesh and yeah, from Yogesh and Hannes.
Yeah, he was. We spent a bunch of time at IETF 115
Yes.
with him. So.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think having the threads listed in the architecture document appears to be a sensible approach rather than creating yet another document.
Yeah,
that makes sense, John. So, yeah. Is Roy? Is that good for you in terms of like working backwards? It's not as probably as precise as you would like to see it, but we had the terminology discussions end of last year, which are the terminology is part of the architecture document, but then we kind of tabled that a little bit. We moved to the use cases, and now obviously we made some good progress on the use cases, and now at some point in time we need to switch back to the architecture and make some progress there.
Yeah, there's a couple things that are still out there. One is we've got to have material for 116. It's like we have to work back from what the slide decks are going to be, who the speakers are, and so forth. So you kind of need to clarify those and give us some room to move. The security documents and so forth, just having them out there and people working against them. I think threat model is precisely what we need to call out. You know, I agree with John. And March is coming up really quick. And of course, there's posters and a whole bunch of other stuff that I have to make sure that things are out there. They just don't come for free.
Okay.
And some of this, Hannes, should just be, hey, this is work that needs to be done. We don't have to talk about it in the meeting. Just who's on point and get it done.
Yeah. Well, I guess John and I need to look up the dates and figure out, send out some emails to everyone to see who is actually planning to be there in person and who is going to join from remote. The time zone difference may be a challenge for some, so we'll see how that works. And then obviously we need to get the documents prepared and then submitted in time. Dick, you raised your hand, and Yogesh, you too.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll be brief. I just put some links into the chat with regard to that new use case proposal that's related to the NIST consumer software labeling recommendations. So if people are curious and want to know where this comes from, that's where you can find some additional materials. Thanks.
Yeah, I was planning to put you on the spot on this new use case to give us a kind of a sneak preview, so to say, because I suspect not everyone has had the time to read through the emails on the list during the holidays.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to do it, Hannes. Don't feel like I'm on the spot at all. So NIST has been working. I assume everyone's familiar with NIST here, right? I want to be sensitive to my colleagues outside the U.S. They're our National Standards Technology Institute. But at any rate, they've been working. They've been assigned responsibilities under an executive order to create cybersecurity recommendations and standards. And one of their required deliverables is essentially a label, a consumer software label that will help consumers identify essentially a level of trust in software. And so the link that I placed into the chat there, the recommendation link, which you see at doi.org, that contains the actual recommendation about the labels. NIST isn't coming out and saying which specific type of label they expect people to implement. But I think what's interesting is Microsoft supplied some comments on this NIST labeling, where they suggested that app stores could be a source of information for the use of these labels. So I think this is what it's referring to. It's kind of like the ability to say, you know, how much can I trust a piece of software in an app store or anywhere else? And the label is intended to be some type of indicator as to, you know, how much trustworthiness exists for a software app in an app store or anywhere else. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, thanks a lot. Obviously have to find out on how to put that information in there. We obviously have a few sort of paragraphs already regarding additional information that gets put into the registry concerning, for example, static code analysis and other information. And so maybe that could be additional information as a kind of a reputation-based scheme to give some additional information about sort of like the quality of the software, so to speak.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Hannes, and I think that's what will need to come through in SCITT is the specific information that describes the integrity of the process that leads to filing one of these trust declarations into a trust registry. That process needs to be very high integrity and credibly secure, such that, you know, people can't tamper with the process and put, you know, false information into the trust registry, because people are going to be relying on that information. So that, I suspect, that will all have to be covered as part of the SCITT design concept. Thanks.
Yeah. Charles, you raised your hand.
No, it's me actually.
Oh, you're right. Yogesh, you go next.
Yeah. First of all, I wanted to ask intermittently when the many audience are speaking, I seem to have losing their voice. So it's very patchy. Is it a problem on my side, do you think? Or you guys, can you hear consistently when others speak?
It's fine for me.
Yeah, the audio quality is good for me also.
Okay, so something we need to check on my login. Is there a settings, audio settings, which we need to fine tune presumably to make it?
Maybe typically it's a wireless LAN issue. Your kids are probably streaming something. It's as simple as that.
We have many users, but it shouldn't have been that problem. But okay, the point is the terminology. Yes, we had a great discussions with Cedric and Anton about the terminology part and overlapping with rats. And I think barring 2 or 3 common terminology pain points, I think we are in a pretty good shape on terminology, so we can quickly wrap it up this month as one of the open action items in the architecture before we go to IETF 116. So that's something we will take care and we'll take forward that discussions. And the threat model, yes, we started discussing that last year, but we thought we should prioritize use case document first. So me, Hank, and others started on the use case, but now it is going in a good shape. We can target specifically on the threat model documents, and anyone interested, happy to kind of collaborate. And we working on threat model would be the next priority after settling down the use case document. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. It's very much on our radar. It's not out of radar. Yeah.
Yogesh, on the terminology, did you, if I recall it correctly, like we had obviously a lot of choices for the terms, and I assume you had some offline discussions with Cedric and Antoine, and so are those?
Sorry,
is the current status reflected somewhere?
I couldn't hear you at all. Sorry, I missed the conversation completely.
I know of no document that summarizes any decisions or any summary that came out of Cedric, Antoine, or Yogesh.
There is a GitHub issue. Basically, we discussed that on a GitHub issue, actually, on the architecture. Let me share that.
Okay, please post it in
the last I remember is we parked this discussion waiting for use cases. So we probably need to bring it back and have everybody comment on it.
I think it would be good to post a mail to the list to refresh everyone on where we are on these terms.
Okay.
In which direction we are going. I personally am not I don't care about the terms that much, except for the trust term. While you are looking up the link, Charles, you are in the queue as well.
Can you hear me?
I'm just checking
Yeah.
where did we? Okay, let me hold on. I will take an action item to kind of clarify where are we with the terminologies section, what are the open issues, and then how to take it forward based on what we had concluded so far. So I will share something onto the group shortly on SCITT@IETF.org.
Sorry, Charles. Now it's your turn.
Okay. Thanks. So, by the way, Happy New Year, everybody.
Thank you.
I was watching the email thread pretty closely over the break, and I just reviewed the document. I'm sorry, I am catching up a little bit here. I've got an awful lot of stuff going on, so I'm unfortunately time slicing a little bit. But I did look over the document, in its contemporary state, and I think some of the comments that were made in the email threads have not been reflected in the document at this point. And I also had a question on whether we have decided whether we are going to include kind of evidence directly in whatever the SCITT data structure is, or if we're going to refer outside to that. And so just two examples of those issues. The first one is that one of the things that I think was mentioned was the term trust bond was a little bit proprietary and not a sort of a well-known term of art, and that we should change that. I see that it's still in there, and I do agree with that change, so I would recommend that if we want to debate that, we should do so. But the other one is I think there's the use cases imply that we are going to, I think, have evidence in the database. I actually personally favor that, but I believe Hitachi is sort of not in favor of that. So I'm kind of interested in which way we want to go. And I think we need to get that significant issue straightened out before we get too far down the road here. And then just one third thing is that we have a lot of use cases now, and I recommend we kind of put a pin in that. I think these use cases are going to be pretty good for illustrating, at least on round one, what we're trying to do, and we probably ought to limit further use cases until later. So that is my brain dump for now over the holidays, and thanks very much for listening.
Roy, I think you want to respond to that.
Yeah, Charlie, the question of whether the data is stored in the SCITT database or out, I think I can see both happening. I don't see anything precluding those. The use cases, though, do we have one that describes data outside? Like, I understand for privacy reasons, people would, might like to just have the hash of the content in the SCITT and make it opaque to everybody else.
Ooh,
I mean,
okay.
the way I read it, the use cases were kind of implying that the evidence will be included in the database, and it's not 100% clear or defined. And I think maybe this document is not really where we want to define that. We want to define that somewhere else, but it is a thing we need to kind of resolve, in my opinion.
Question was, do any of the other use cases not cover data outside the SCITT database?
I don't think any of them are excluding one method or another based on my reading.
What I would love to see is one that documents with data in and another use case with data out, just so that we covered both. If you want to pin the use cases, do you think that's appropriate, or do you think we have to cover that before we lock them down?
I think it's okay either way. I guess I just want to make sure we don't move too fast there and gloss over that.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Okay, John, you're next.
Could we talk about the terms real quick? Sorry.
Let's finish this one because we have I guess those in the queue probably want to respond to this specific issue. It's filled up.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Go ahead. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. There was a big flood of people joining the queue at the same time as me. I would observe that this conversation was had in. I can't remember whether it was quite in the working group. It was right about the time we changed from being a BOF to a working group. But this discussion was clearly had, and the conclusion clearly was that we must have space for the payload, but we must not require the payload. So I'm happy if we want to have that sort of more elucidated in the use cases. And the use cases are things like, where the payload is evidence or there's no reasonable way of transporting it out of band, it makes sense for it to be there. Where you're actually looking at supply chain integrity, then you can put things like hashes, and then there's no necessary disclosure, but there is still transparency and trust. It would probably be good for me, or Hannah's probably me, because I've brought it up, to go and find that discussion again if you want to do it. But I don't think we should revisit it because it was had at some length a couple of months ago.
There was a third one, which is if it's already public, there's no sense double storing it in two places. That was
that also, the practical constraint as well. So it's a good point, Charlie, because it comes up all the time. We should make sure it's written down somewhere clear, but the discussion was had and the conclusion was we need both.
I haven't made every discussion, but that is obviously a critical architectural foundation.
Yeah. I'll make a note of that.
Steve, you're next.
I mean, that's part of what we were talking about. I think they're documenting some of this stuff in the use cases or in some form will help, because there was the balance of disclosure of information. There was the challenges of technical, how much data does this thing have and how what into it. There was also the ability to index so that if the data doesn't have to be stored, so that the query and some capabilities can still find the information. So I think there's a little bit of life cycle capacities, balance of where information is mixed with the disclosure of information that we should figure out. So I think obviously getting it written down will help with some of this, whether it's in a use case or some other requirements document will help.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like I said, I just wanted to make a note to ensure that we didn't zoom over that without thinking about it.
I guess it's my turn.
If we can make it transparent if we can make it an optimization for a particular instance and how it stores it, that might be one option, but that also impacts on whether it's how it's queryable. So we definitely want to get some stuff written down around it. So two different, the challenges is as we're promoting content across different instances, is that ability to store it external or in the ledger, does that wind up as a user issue, or is it just an optimization of the particular instance? I think that's part of the details we want to be able to coordinate. Is it's that promotion across that really makes it quirky.
Okay, Raymond.
Hi. I don't know. It's coming up. Raymond is in array. That's fine. So anyway, okay, as you know, or maybe not, is that I'm working on this election data use case, and I wasn't really planning on making that a formal submission, but maybe I should. It's sort of off the beaten trail, but not too far. So, I don't see any reason why it can't be accommodated with what everyone's talking about, but it does need data outside of the ledger, for example, and also air gapping support. And maybe that's about it. So it isn't a lot of things that I need special, but I was working on a paper on this remote references question that I started working on and then got sucked into other issues, and I didn't finish it yet. But it just considers these 4 aspects that I think should be broken out, or at least considered when we talk about remote references. And it's covered in the paper, so I'd maybe not take time now, but I'm working on that. I'm working on that. And then we talked about the election data use case. I want to thank Hannes and a couple other people on that one technical meeting. I'll swing it by the group and see what everybody thinks, how we should handle that. But I don't mind not having it be, a central point, since we're focused on software. It's kind of a diversion. Maybe would irritate people by being too far off the focus. Okay.
Thanks, Ray. But I think it still makes sense to even for later to have a few paragraphs written about it, and specifically since we want to make sure that we have a generic solution covering various different aspects. So I think since we discussed it, I didn't see any showstoppers, but it's still useful to document it somewhere, even though we could maybe put it on hold for now before we include it.
Well, I have a lot written on it, so I'd have to
Yeah.
probably pare it down to something that is not so voluminous. I know that Neil McBurnett is also here, and he's interested in this use case. So it's not just me. And so maybe as those people in that group, we can work together to. But yeah, so a few paragraphs, maybe just a list of requirements that
Ray,
we want.
I would love to see your document, Ray.
Which one? The whole thing?
Your whole thing. I would love to see it written up.
Okay. All right. All right. So love to show it to people if you guys are receptive. So I will put something together. I do have a bunch of stuff already written, so I'll just slap it up and see what happens, and then we can go from there. Thanks.
Cool. Dick, you're next.
So I want to address what Charlie raised as a concern about the phrase trust bond. I'll take ownership for introducing that. I couldn't think of another way to describe it. I'm certainly not married to those terms, Charlie. So if we can come up with a better way to describe the concept, I'm all in. If you would like to say trust relationship, if you think that's more appropriate, I'm okay with that. But anything you want to say, this concept of needing to confirm or validate this relationship is pretty well known. In fact, I sent an error message warning actually from GPG that describes this very concept as a concern. So hopefully we don't disagree that about the need for this, or that this concept is real. It's just a matter of describing it in a way that we can all agree. If that's what you're referring to, then I think I'm good with whatever the group comes up with. Thanks.
Yeah, I thought that might push a button, Dick. But I think the real issue is that it's we're playing in a whole bunch of different spaces here. Trust bond is not a term of art right now in a lot of the supply chain work that I'm doing. However, I do agree that the concept is important and we need to define it. I would just say trust or trustworthiness would be a decent substitute for the use case. And then as we go through the use case, we can define exactly how to implement that in a very specific way. And if we want to call that trust bond, that's fine too. But the other thing I would say is if we're going to use any terms of art here that we expect to become generic, we have to be also very careful that they're not proprietary. And that is, I'm not sure, Dick, if you guys are using this, if you got a trademark on it or anything like that. The trust score is another one that I think is going to be a little bit problematic. So we want to be a little bit cautious there and make sure that we're being extremely Swiss in our neutrality.
So let me reply to that, Charlie. We certainly are not claiming any intellectual property rights over trust, the phrase trust bond. It's used in other areas to mean different things, but if we want to change it, I'll go with the group. Honestly, if we all agree that the concept is important, then we can call it whatever we want and describe it accordingly.
Yeah, I think the thing about the use case is the way it's described is it kind of assumes that if you go to Merriam's, you can look it up and see what it is, and I don't think that's actually the case right now. We would probably be defining it, in a definite way for the first time. At least in my experience, I haven't seen the term used in other documents besides this one, and it's not that it hasn't been. But I've been around the block a little bit on this, and I just haven't seen it. So, just let's ensure that our terminology is neutral and accessible and well understood by the reader. And if we need to define new terms to do that, that's certainly within our purview.
So I'll go on the record as officially withdrawing the use of the term trust bond with the agreement that we will have something to replace it with. Is that okay?
I think that's perfectly reasonable. I guess I'm just pointing out that it's all I want to say is, one, it could be proprietary, and if it's not, that's fantastic.
Yep.
So much the better. Two,
Yep.
It's not well defined, and we need to make sure that it is, or use a better defined term. That's all.
I agree on
No
all
biggie.
points, so let's go ahead and resolve it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dick.
Cool. Hank, you're next.
Yeah, so my hand is a little bit old, some spidery webs. So we were talking about data in structure, data outside of structure, therefore just having a reference baked into the structure. That is also touching on two other topics that are probably aligned, but actually separate use cases. And please excuse me to project a little bit into solution space here, but we're always talking about the statement coming from supply chain entities is opaque. You do not have to understand it. We are talking about the authenticity of that statement. So now this statement, if it's a reference, is not opaque anymore. It's well understood. It's actually well known. It's probably standardized the same way the original science statement is standardized, or is going to be standardized now. So and that's a certain semantics of a non-opaque, a well understood statement that we provide the frame for. It's like, here's the URL, here's the hash, whatever, a reference to the thing where you can find it, or a mud URL or whatever, something like that along those lines. And that is touching to another topic, which is another set of non-opaque, well-known statements. And that's how you deliberately might relate statements in a standardized way that is well-known and, again, not opaque. That might be another layering of envelope inside the cozy envelope. I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to project into solution space too much here, but I think these are somehow interconnected, and I think these are all non-opaque statements. And that's a design thing we have to take into account. That is not to this will not be addressed by the use case, but I just wanted to point out all of these things are then the first non-opaque statements. Yeah, that's basically it. Okay.
Okay, thanks, Hank. Roy, you have your hand up.
Yeah, mine was a little bit of a follow-up to Hank's, which is be aware that there's also the question of what do we expose in our audit. So as people write up their use cases, we don't have a real coverage of what they expect to be exposed during the audit of the ledger or the registry data, right? So that'll help some of this. There's both data that gets stored on the ledger, which is for audit purposes, and then there's data stored in storage or external that can be in a completely different database. So hopefully people are thinking through both those as different storage mediums.
Okay. Monty.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the, I guess, the terminology. We get a long queue here. Do we have, oftentimes I find, actually from a linguistics point of view, it's actually better to have a definition before you come up with a word or term for it. It might be just having a few, what do we mean by this term? And then come up with a term associated with it. Otherwise, you end up arguing over semantics. So do we have a clear place to put a few draft, the gloss on the right-hand side that would actually define this with leaving the actual term blank? Do we have
Monty,
something?
that's a very good point. This was also what I suggested to focus on in my review on the list before to describe more precisely on what we mean in terms of what actions need to be done to like have that relationship or whatever you want to call it, or verify that relationship, etc., etc. So I think that will typically help to make it clear what we mean by that, and maybe then also to find out whether that matches an existing concept already. And I posted a link to a glossary, a security glossary, which contains numerous terms. So maybe there's something new that we need to come up with, but maybe there's something that we can reuse.
Yeah, I would prefer that. So is there, again, I'm still unfamiliar with the tools. How would one come up with, is it just a mailing list item, or how would you have a set of draft definitions that people could bang on?
Mailing list.
Just on a mailing list? Okay, sure.
Yeah, but I think the best way would be to look at the document, the use case document, which talks about this, read through that paragraph or that use case, and then maybe it gives you enough information already to say like, hey, this is actually relates very much to that other term that I'm used to seeing in, I don't know, community X, and that would be good feedback.
Okay, I'll see if we can get that done this week. Thanks.
I would like to add to what Monty's point is. Basically, the intent was that all the terms we use as part of the SCITT should be in the terminology section of the SCITT architecture, where we define what that means in the extent of SCITT context. So there shouldn't be anything which should be ambiguous or in such respect as what Monty is pointing. So.
Okay, Steve, you were actually next.
I was gonna, well, one, I'm looking at the clock and we're gonna actually get to terminology because I was gonna pause and just kind of say we want to focus there. I think but just the one teasing of this conversation of the storage is just to think about access control, right? It's just because it's external, that may be public, it may be not public. So there's a level of information that's available to certain users depending on the scenario. So we've had a bucket for RBAC to discuss. It's just another one to put in the queue and think about.
Good point. So we managed to get through the queue and have a few minutes left. So I wanted to use that time to also suggest in preparation of the 6 store use cases, etc., let me post a link to the mailing list, or not to the mailing list, to the chat window. And hopefully someone else has had a chance to look at the link that Tracy sent around right before Christmas, so you may have missed it. And it's a bunch of write-ups on different use cases by different companies. So there's a lot of additional context that comes with the use cases, but I believe there's some key aspects in there. For example, the air gap scenario is covered there. There's the link to attestation. There's a pointer to sort of like the use cases with Docker images, for example. There's also pointers or sort of a hint that key management is quite important, and also identity, reusing existing identity infrastructure. So if you haven't had a chance to read through these use cases yet, take a look at that email and click through the links. And then ideally, since those are obviously software use cases, we want to double check whether we covered some of those aspects already, or most of it, and whether we can beef up the existing text with this additional information. I think that could be quite useful. Just as a reminder. And then I took also some notes as next steps for the next meeting. I would remind all of you who promised to actually take some action, so that we can put together an agenda for next week's call, and then make some progress on the architecture / terminology, and so on. I don't know if Hank, you will have the possibility to schedule your one-on-one with others during this week, so we can already discuss the outcome of this. But yeah, that's my proposal.
Yeah, just to add, for terminology, I found the issue which we were discussing, Ray. You were saying that, as far as I recollect, it was not linked to, sorry, not Ray, Roy. It was not linked to the use case, but there were only 2 or 3 open issues on terminologies, which there was an overlap with RATs. I recollect, and I shared that in the chat window. If you scroll up, because it's gone down at 4:37 timestamp, 4:37:41. So anyone welcome to comment that issue, and we will try to close this as early as possible and update the group what we have concluded on the Monday call. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Zachary, if you have some, for example, some text suggestions for the use case document based on the work you have done in your group, that would be great too.
Yeah, sorry to jump in before Zach has a chance to comment. I did make a note earlier. Joshua Locke also mentioned that he'd be willing, who works with the Sigstore community, he said he'd be willing to help with Sigstore use cases.
Yep, I was just about to comment to that effect that I will work on integrating aspects of the Sigstore use cases into case studies into the SCITT use cases. I can take that on.
Great, thanks, Josh.
Perfect. Thanks for volunteering, Raymond.
Question about the technical meeting. Is that still going to be occurring, and does it go through Meet Echo, or anyway, can you just post an email to the working group or something each time? It would really help me know which week it is, and if it's happening or not, because I just get lately just trying to find everything scrambled around. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah. So officially we have one meeting. This is the one, the official meeting per week, and we have all the tools and so on. If we need additional meetings, like Hank was proposing these 101s, and for example, this other meeting, which was supposed to be, the purpose of it was more to discuss topics which are a little bit outside of the working group, like add-ons, like software stuff and so on. That's perfect too, but it's not something. Only those who are interested in discussing those, I think, should be involved. It's not something like everyone can discuss with everyone they like, and they should, of course. But officially, there's only one meeting, this one, and I will remind everyone and send a link and try to update, or not try. We'll distribute an agenda every time. So, yeah.
Yeah. So Ray, just to add to what Hannes said, the last year's SCITT technical meetings have been cancelled now. So there's only one meeting, and this is this really the meeting? I have cancelled the invite.
The reason for this was, and maybe this was confusing to some, but we had this orphan meeting invite around, but I couldn't cancel it because Yogesh created it, and as you, Yogesh, you went on sabbatical, it was kind of hanging there. So at the beginning of this conference call series with Meet Echo, we had some confusion consequently. But I think we are past that point. So thanks for cleaning up our sort of Outlook invite list.
So we were having spin-off meetings on deeper technical issues that we said we were going to cancel until we had a more in-depth agenda. The whole point was to work on the documents that would bring back to this meeting as a group, as a way for us all to work together. But right now we have nothing on the agenda for any other spin-off meetings.
Perfect. Dick, you want to say a few famous last words?
Just wondering if we might want to put set a goal out there for ourselves on finishing the use case document. I'm wondering, would people be willing to say we want to finish it by, I don't know, whatever date, like March 1st or something? Is there any appetite for that?
Well, I hope that the group is able to finish it a little bit earlier, to be honest. I understand there's still some content, but given what I heard today with the volunteers and Hank sort of like spending some extra time with conference calls, so I'm hoping that we get there. We have the document in a good shape already by the end of the month, so at least mid-February.
Yeah, and I'm willing to commit to meeting whatever timeline we agree to. So whatever that is, I'm prepared to, participate and achieve that goal. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks.
Did you say, Hannes, did you say mid-February? Was that your proposed, or did you say end of February?
No, mid. I think it's getting there. Like it's and if people really sort of do what they just promised during the meeting, I think that looks fantastic, right?
Okay.
Yeah. This is like, I need this to be mid-February because I will at some point have to switch to TCG gears and fly to Vancouver, and that is a little bit more difficult to get in sync with. Maybe not with US, but with others.
Hey, can you let me know when you're going to be in Vancouver and me come up?
Sure.
Mid-February is good by me, guys. So I'm in.
Okay. People are dropping. We're already overtime, so I think we should stop here and get back to work, so to say. Thank you all for joining, and speak to you soon.
See you soon.
Thanks,
Stay
everyone.
safe.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
So you're recording this already, Hannes, right?
It's automatically recorded. And thanks for taking meeting minutes. Okay, it was a lot of discussion, so very complicated to capture all this stuff.
Yeah,
Or
the notes jump around a little, but I did my best.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, see ya.